Howdy, howdy, howdy. This is J.W. Cattern. I'm a journalist in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and this is a walkthrough on how to extract tables from PDF documents with PDFplumber in Python. So just to start out as a disclaimer, I am a decent journalist, but I am by no means an expert at programming. That's why I'm calling it a walkthrough instead of a tutorial. However, I do think that people, especially journalists, can benefit from watching someone who's not an expert at this do it, because hopefully it will encourage y'all to try it out for yourself. You really don't need to know that much, and it's not that hard. If people point out what I could be doing better in the comments, I'm totally fine with that, because I'm sure there's stuff that I could be doing better. So why would you want to extract tables from a PDF document? The best way I can explain this is just by showing you the PDF I was working with on a story. This is something I obtained from the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services in Virginia. I'm working on I just published a story about involuntary detention. If you're interested in learning more, I'll put a link to that in the description. This was the data that I obtained, and as you can see, this is pretty common for things that you'll get out of public records requests. And you'll see as we scroll down that there's new tables with new information that's not related. Some information is not included in certain tables and it is in others. There are times when you would get a document from a public office and it would just be easier to, copy, manually write it into a spreadsheet, and then you can work with the data that way. But for something like this, it's sort of in the gray area of that. But also, if you're wanting to learn how to program, this is a good opportunity to try and learn how to do some basic data analysis and visualization. So as a journalist, you want to sort of look at the document first before you get into programming to see if you can spot any trends. And for me, I noticed pretty quickly that, if you can see, there's loss of custody events in this table here. And the total events, this is back in 2015. And if we scroll down, you see that they stay pretty consistent for a few years. But then once you get to closer to the present, we see this big jump from almost a triple of the number. So obviously I wanted to, for my story, show this trend. That was sort of the center of the story, or the thrust of the story. So I wanted to use the data to create a visualization of that. And PDFplumber was the tool that I found that would make it easy to do that. I should mention that this particular PDF is already OCR'd, meaning that the text is recognized. So, if you're interested in learning how to do that, I'll put something in the description, but also I'd be happy to make a video about that too. I run Linux on my computer, so this next stuff is going to be in the terminal. Might be a little scary if you've never seen terminal stuff before, but I'm essentially just going through folders like you would in your file system on Windows or Mac. It's the same thing. So first of all, I'm going to go to my projects folder. So next I'm going to create a virtual environment. If you don't know what that is, PDFplumber is a module in Python, and most programs in Python will use several modules. And a virtual environment is a way where you can create a virtual environment where you can install certain modules that you only plan to use for that project, so that you don't have to install them on your computer and it takes up all the space. So to do that, I'm going to type in virtual environment. We'll say PDFplum, and then I'm going to open that folder. And this is going to be different if you're in Windows or Mac. So, if you'll have to figure it out yourself, basically, if you're getting that. But I'm going to type in this command, which activates the environment, and then I'm going to create a new folder, PDF, we'll call it PDF project, open that, and then we're going to create a Python file and then we are going to open VS Code. VS Code is the IDE, which is an integrated development environment for Python. It doesn't really matter which one you use, but that's the one that has been easiest for me. So the first thing we are going to do is open a terminal in here, and we are going to use pip to install PDFplumber. There's other ways to install it, which you can find with the PDFplumber documentation, which I'll include in the description as well. But yeah, it's installed, so we are going to import that. We're going to import pandas because we're going to need some data frame stuff. I guess I need to install that as well. And then finally, we're going to import matplotlib. And matplotlib is what's going to allow us to visualize the data once we've analyzed it. Okay, so first of all, we are going to open the PDF with PDFplumber. So to do that, you're going to want to make sure that you copy and paste the PDF that you're wanting to analyze into the same project folder that you created for the program. You can literally do that just by copying and pasting with your file system, which I've done, so now you can see the PDF here. So to open the PDF with PDFplumber, we're going to use the open method, which you can, PDF is, we're just setting a variable here, and then we're calling PDFplumber.open, which is the method, and then we're going to want to call the PDF. I'm going to rename this to something that's less long and complicated, so we'll say example PDF, and we will type that in here. We're going to want to put it in quotes. Oh my god. Oop. Okay, so now it should be able to open it, and now it starts. Now we have to start thinking a little bit more. We have to start, deciding what we want our graph to show. So in my case, as I showed earlier with the data, I'm mainly interested in the number of events. So, if I could just show it by year, and that would be fine, but a more interesting graph, and since we already have the data anyway, I want to show it by month. And so we really need the month data and the event data. Those are the two main things. And you can see this is just a mess up here. So we have to sort of think creatively about how we're going to get this. So the idea that I came up with was, I'm just going to create a basic Python's list. We'll say LOC for loss of custody, which is the main data column that I'm interested in. And then we are going to create two columns for that. One is going to be month, year. The other one's going to be total events. which that is not what they are called in the PDF, but we will get to that. Okay, this is the fun part. This is where we're going to write a function that will extract the data from the tables in the PDF. So in Python, you say def to define a function. We'll call it getTotal, and then for the parameter, we'll just put doc. We're going to enter this PDF, but this is just a placeholder for now. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is create an empty list, and in this list is where we're going to add each of the rows that we want to analyze. So to make things simple and to move through because we're working with multiple years of data, we're going to create a year counter. So even though the table is starting, the first table is 2015, you'll notice that it's fiscal year 2015. And this created some confusion for me when I was first programming this. But so you'll notice that it starts, this is actually July 2014, and then it changes to 2015, January here. So we're going to have to accommodate that. But so we're going to have the year counter actually start at 2014. And then another list that we're going to want to create is the actual pages. And so with Python, counting starts at 0. So this first page is actually 0 in the way that Python looks at it. So this first table is the actual one we want to start with, which would actually be 1 in Python. So I won't bore you with going through the actual PDF, but you'll just have to trust me that these are the pages that I want. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, and 13. Okay. And then we're going to do another list, and this is going to actually be using PDFplumber. So we are going to use the list function, and then we're taking doc, which this is the PDF that we've opened with PDFplumber here, and then we're going to use the PDFplumber pages class. So that's .pages. And so what that is doing is converting the PDF page into a object that we'll be able to interact with easier in Python. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use something called list comprehension. So this is an index. So like, you can think of it like page numbers, which is kind of confusing because the class is also called pages. But we'll say a for loop, which is for I in select pages. So here we're saying, okay, take this PDF that we're going to enter here and use PDFplumber to extract the pages from it. And the pages that we want, here's the page number. We're going to say that basically each page that has an index in this list is what we want. So basically we want page with index 1, which as I explained with Python actually means page 2, and so on. Okay, let's continue. So now we're going to actually start to iterate or go through the pages now that we have the pages. So we'll say for page, we'll use another for loop, for page and doc pages. Now, remember how I said the fiscal year, so that makes things a little complicated because we're iterating through each table, but the year number is going to change halfway through. So the easiest way I thought of to deal with this is just to split the table into 2 lists. So we'll do the first half, which will be the first part of the year. So we'll say table first half. And page, and this is where we actually do the extract table in PDFplumber. So we'll say extract table. we'll say negative 13 to negative 7. And the reason why we're doing negative numbers here is because, as you can see, there's this is really confusing up at top here. It's not really clear where the rows start. Like, is this 1 or 2 rows? I don't know. But we can just avoid that by counting backwards instead, starting from the bottom. So negative 7, this is saying negative 13 to negative 7. So if we go 1, 2, and we talked about how Python starts counting from 0. That's not true for negative numbers. So we'll do negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay? So starting with July, and then negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so we say to negative 7, which won't be including January. It'll just go up to January. So it'll be what we want, July to December. Okay? Okay, and then we'll do the same thing for the second table. We'll do the same thing for the second half of the table. So second half equals page.extract. And once again, pages. We're iterating through all the pages that we created here. So extract table. Be careful here because there's a separate method in PDFplumber that is extract tables, plural. I just want to use the singular extract table because there's only one table that I want on the page. You can look at PDFplumber's documentation, which I'll link to. And then for this one, we are going to do negative 7. So this time it will include 7. And then, because we're starting from there, and then up to negative 1. So basically up until the last row, but not including the last row because we don't want the totals. Okay, so now remember how I said earlier that the table gets wacky at fiscal year 2017 and it randomly adds this extra column, which is going to mess with how we're counting it. So we're going to have to add a if statement here. So if year counter, and even though it's the fiscal year 2017, we're going to say if it's less than 2016 because that's the actual year that it starts on, July 2016. So now we're going to iterate through each. So this is extracted. Basically, it split this table into 2. So we've essentially got 2 tables. We've got the end of the 2016 year, or if we're starting from the very beginning. We've got the end of 2014, and then we've got the end, or the beginning. So we've got the end of 2014 and the beginning of 2015. That's what these 2 tables are. So now we're going to iterate through those rows that we extracted. So we're going to say for row in table, we'll do the first table first. And we're going to say total rows. This is the empty list that we created earlier. And we're going to say let's add. So in Python you say append to add to empty list. Okay, so this part might get a little confusing, but just hang in there with me. So basically the row that we want for the purposes of our graph, we want to show the loss of custody events over time. So we first want to pull the month. So basically I'm going to take the month from the table. We're going to add the year, right? So to make sure it's the right month is corrected to the right year. And that is going to be the x-axis of our data visualization that we create. And then the loss of custody events will be the y-axis. So that's the 2 bits of data. But because the way that the data is listed in the table where it's just the month, right? So we're going to have to add the month with the correct year with programming. So the way that we're going to do that is the month is in the first column of the row. So we are going to say add row, and then counting from 0, this is the actual first column. The brackets mean it's in, that's the index, or the column in this case. So then we are going to add a space for purposes of formatting. And then we are going to do str, which basically means we're going to convert the year counter, which is a number, into a string in Python, which basically means words and stuff, right? So we're going to say year counter, yep. And then, so that's the date, right? That's the first piece of information. Now we are going to add the loss of custody events. Okay, so let's check that. So remember, it changes in 2017, so we want to start from the beginning. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and so we're going to want to do the same thing for the second half. So we can just copy and paste this, make sure the indent is correct, and then we want to change this to second half. And then we're doing the same thing, except remember the year is changing halfway through, and so here we are going to do +1. Okay, and now, so we're saying this is what you do, we're telling the computer this is what you do for if the, basically in a sort of convoluted way, but we're saying, you know, if the year is less than 2016, do this. If it's not, in other words, once we get to this table, because the reason why this works is, right, when we're telling the computer, okay, year counter is 2014, go through this table. And so we're going to have it iterate through the whole table, both the first half and the second half. And then at the end here, we're going to create, we can just go ahead and do this. We're going to create a year counter. So we're going to say, we want to make sure it's still in the for loop. But we'll say year counter plus equal 1. So in Python, this is basically a way to say, okay, take this variable and assign it. This is basically a shorthand for a year counter +1, but it, like just saying equal like this. So it'd be like saying, why am I getting a red squiggly right here? Indented block. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but hopefully it's just going to go away. But this is basically, the plus equals is a shorthand for this, but we don't need to write all this out. We can just write plus equals 1. Okay. Okay, so, oh, I think this is, it's giving me the red squiggly line because it thinks I want it here, but I don't actually. But, okay, just to circle back to what I was saying, so we're telling the computer, okay, go through this for loop, year counter is 2014. Okay, now that we're done with this table, let's add +1 to the year. So now it's going to be 2015, which is correct because this table starts in July 2015. And then with this +1, we are making it so that it'll add the year at their appropriate time in January. But then once we get to this table, which is fiscal year 2017, but starts in July 2016, and by this time we'll have added to the year counter, which is starting at 2014 twice, so 1, 2, so we'll be at 2016 here. And so that's when this is going to come into play, because the computer will say, oh, the year counter is not less than 2016, so what do we do in that case? So we're going to do the exact same thing, and this is clearly like really not elegant code, I would say. There's probably a easier way to do this, or a more concise way, but this is the solution I came up with and it works. So we're going to do the same thing, but instead of 6, we're going to change this to 7 because of that additional column. So let's just go back and double check our work. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's correct. Okay, and yep, sure enough, the red squiggly line's gone away now. And so now we're going to do return total rows. And we can check, always good to check and make sure things are working before you continue. So we can do a test variable, and we'll say get total PDF, and then we can print it. Let's see what happens. Okay, we got an error. This usually happens. Okay, let's see, it's saying a problem with the rows. Oh, right. Okay, I see what happened. So we need to actually, you can only append one thing is what it's saying. And we're wanting to basically enter in coordinates for the graph into this list. But in order to do that, we need to basically we're basically adding lists to a bigger list. So we want to, the way we do that is putting brackets around here. That way we are only adding technically one thing, even though it's a pair of coordinates, basically. Oops. So we'll do that. Okay. Now let's try that again. Okay, great. So now let's check and make sure that this data is matching up. I'm not going to go through all of them, but let's see. So July 0, that's correct. August 2, September 1, October 7, November 4. Okay, that's looking good. Let's go towards the end and make sure that looks correct. Fiscal year 2022. Okay, so let's see. June 2022. Wait, this is the wrong table. Okay. June 2022, total 9. Yes, that's correct. 12. Yes. 9. 9. 9. Yep. 16. Okay. Yeah, that's looking good. All right. So now we're going to write another function, and this is basically the problem with the way that this is right now is one thing, these numbers are strings, so we want to convert those to things that Python will recognize as numbers. And then we want to convert these strings into something that Python is going to more easily understand to be the date. And it's basically a way of making it so that we can more easily graph it with matplotlib, which is another Python module. Okay, so let's get rid of this. We're going to do define, we'll call it clean data. Okay, so it's going to take the rows in our columns, which this is sort of misleading. So the rows we're adding from here, but really it's this information, right? So it's these date and number pairs. And then for the columns, we just sort of artificially created these, but these are basically in place of what was in the PDF, right? Okay, so to do this, this is where we're going to start to use pandas. So we're going to create a data frame, df for data frame, PD short for pandas, dot, because we're using a method, capital D, it won't work if you don't capitalize D and F in data frame. And then this is basically saying, okay, we want to make what we're entering into here into a data frame. Making it into a data frame will make it easier to visualize. The way that the data frame thing works is you have to say columns equals calls. Okay. Now to reference columns in a data frame, use brackets. I don't really know why I'm explaining this because it's sort of an insufficient explanation for people who don't understand it, and then for people who do understand it, it's totally useless. Whatever. Okay, so total events. And we're basically going to, remember what I said, we're going to change these numbers into strings. So we'll say it's equal to total events. And we're going to use the apply method, which is basically going to say, okay, use this pandas method, which is to numeric, so converting to a numeric, and do it to every row in this column. That's basically all that's saying. And then for the month year, we're going to format that. Using another pandas method to date time, month year. Okay, sorry, let me clear out this terminal. Okay. And then we're going to format. Now this is, depending on how you want to do this, you'll have to look it up yourself, how you want to, it's going to depend on the way that you have the data. Like you saw earlier, this is a string where it's like month, year. And so I looked that up, and the way that you do that is %B space %Y. Don't know why it's a B, but it works. Okay, and then now we are going to, you don't really have to do this, but I just did this to sort of make it easier to visualize. We're going to make the date the index for the data frame. Set index, date, month, year. Yep. And then when you do that, when I was programming this earlier, I found that it was jumbling up all the dates when I did that. And so we want to sort it by the year. So the way that we can do that is df sort index. Okay. Otherwise, you will get a weird looking graph with a bunch of zigzags. Okay, so let's make sure that works. Test. Okay, well, we have to, let's do create table. Oops, what am I doing? So create table, and for the rows, we are going to call a function inside the function. So we'll do get total for the PDF, and then comma, because remember, rows, columns. So for the columns, we did lock columns. Okay. Oh, create table, clean table. Okay. Oh, clean table, clean data. There we go. Okay. And then we'll print the test. Okay, so you can see how it's taken what was essentially coordinates of two strings. Now we have an actual format. And the reason why it's printing twice is just because this is the index. But then these are still matching up. These are still the correct dates. Okay. Okay, so let's visualize this thing. So I'm really gonna go quickly over this. Like I said, this is a walkthrough, not a tutorial, but just to show you sort of how it's pretty easy. So PLT is referring to matplotlib here, PLT, pyplot. And with .style.use, that basically is, I guess you could call them templates of, you know, just colors and the way the graph looks. So I looked at those, and you can Google those, and I liked Seaborn Dark the best. And then we are going to tell matplotlib, you know, okay, so first delete the variable, but we'll call it loss of custody data frame. And we'll do clean data, get total, PDF, what we did before, and then log columns. So we'll tell it we want it to plot DF and specifically the total events. And we only have to tell it this column because it will assume that the index is the x-axis. And then this is just some labeling stuff, so we're going to say events per month. And we'll set the font size. Okay. And we'll give it a title. Loss of custody events. Set the font size. Add some padding. Oops, add a comma. Add some padding. Now this next part is going to look really confusing, but this is something I just looked up as a way, because when I was first plotting it, it was listing all of the months, but it was squishing them all together to where it was illegible. So I looked up how to just, you know, format it so it was just the year. And this is only possible because we did this function, right, which set it to datetime and set it to this format. But now that we've done that, we can do something where it says GCF, auto format, X date. Okay. And then this is just having to do with the layout again, adding some padding. Okay, and then we should be able to just do plot.show. We should get a graph, fingers crossed. There we go. Can I make this thing bigger? Yeah. So there you can see. Now if, you know, like I talked about earlier, if you had just gone through the PDF and picked out the totals for each year, you would have had a more boring graph with less data points. But since we had all of the data for each month, why not do this and make a more interesting graph? And there's the labels right there. And that is it. And you can see that it's a pretty clear trend upward, which is what my story is based on. So I hope that concludes this walkthrough. Hope you got something out of it. Like I said at the beginning, if you have suggestions about how I think the technical term is refactor my code or make it more elegant, make it more efficient, please let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any suggestions about what other videos you'd like me to make, let me know. Other than that, have a good rest of your day.